Please be seated. I have a technical problem. Good morning once again. Good morning. Poor Jeremiah. He didn't want to do anything. But God approached him and said, "Guess what I have for you?" And I can just hear Jeremiah say, "Uh-oh, what now?" He knew about the Word of God because his father was a priest, and so he knew when he heard something that perhaps he'd better listen. And God said, "I have known you forever. I knew you before you were born. I knew you when you were in the womb. I knew you and I know you now." Now, those of us who are parents understand exactly what he meant. Because didn't we know our children when they were still in the womb? Yes, we did. And so Jeremiah said, and I'll paraphrase, "Well, you may think you have something for me to do, but I'm not capable of doing it. After all, I'm just a youth, and I can't speak." And God said, "Guess what I'm going to do for you? I'm going to put the words in your mouth." "Can't get out of it," said Jeremiah. Many years ago, I was at a Presbyterian church, and I had been at that church for many years. I started out there as a young child. So by the time I got into high school, I met some friends, and they said, "We have this wonderful church we go to. It's a Presbyterian church like yours, sort of, but it's a Cumberland Presbyterian church." I had never heard of a Cumberland Presbyterian church. So I said, "Okay, I'll go with you," and it really was wonderful. My parents were both born in the South, and so they sang the kind of music that I liked. My parents and I always went to gospel hymn sings. We did Southern gospel music. We loved it. We went to tent meetings, and that's exactly what went on at the Cumberland Presbyterian Church. However, on Sunday evening at the church service, the pastor would call upon people and say, "Oh, so-and-so is going to give a testimony." Do you know where I sat in that church? I'll show you. Turn around. And I will show you exactly where I sat in that church. Now you think, "Oh, he couldn't possibly sit that far back." Yes, I did. And so I sat here because those of us who are teachers, or who have been teachers, know that if you don't look at the teacher won't see you. So I sat here knowing that the pastor would never be able to see me, and therefore call upon me. And he never did. Now you'd think that would be the end of the story, but it's not. Because over the years, guess what I ended up doing? I ended up doing testimonies, on occasion, not very often, when I chose to do them. Now, little did I know then that the pastor had already talked to these people ahead of time. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they were prepared. He never would have called upon poor Jerry Bennett sitting in the back to do that. At Christmas time, I was in Michigan at my daughter's house, and had lunch with a former student who said to me, and she had done this before, and said to me, "I don't understand why you chose me to be in your speech program." Well, I taught public speaking, and it was important for me to fill up my classes, and so I went around to English classes and talked to them to recruit people to be in my program. And I can remember going into her classroom and said, "I want you to be in my speech program." And she just looked at me and she said, "Oh, okay." And she said to me this time that she'd done before, "I don't understand why you chose me." I said, "I don't know either, except tell me what you had just," she was retired, "tell me what you had just finished doing." She said, "I was teaching public speaking." Now, I don't presume to be God, but sometimes we see things in people, just as God sees them in us, we see things in other people where we know that someone is destined to do something. Now, was I destined to come here and speak to you today? Not if you had seen me when I was a young child. I was very quiet, very shy, never would have stood up and gotten myself into a position to do this. Now I'm not quiet and I'm not shy. Many years later, my wife, who's been deceased now, 12 years maybe, was a church organist. And I showed Nancy my cufflinks. I don't see him. Anyway, we talked about additions to the organ last week with diapason. I have cufflinks and organ stops. And here's one says principal, the other says diapason. So anyway, she got a call from the Organ Society to fill in for an organist at an Episcopal church in one of the suburbs of Detroit. And she would be doing it for 3 months. So being choir people, I went along with her to sing in the choir. And we got there, and I had been in a Presbyterian church all of my life. And I was probably almost 30 years old. And I'd never been in an Episcopal church before. And I went in not knowing what to expect, because the Presbyterians were not very liturgical in those days. And so I went not knowing at all what to expect, but I went there. The church was beautiful. The people were wonderful. The choir was superb. And I fell in love with the Episcopal church. So I went through confirmation classes and decided that I really needed to learn more about the Episcopal church. And so I took classes at a school of theology that we had at the Cathedral in Detroit. And that led to my becoming first a deacon, and then a priest, and then retired, and here I am. It's been a wonderful, wonderful time for me. I've enjoyed thoroughly being in the Episcopal Church and doing all of the wonderful singing and the wonderful liturgy, everything that we do in the Episcopal Church. However, really lots of howevers. Years later, I happened to go back to my old church, small congregation on the fringes of Detroit, and we had a service on a Sunday evening, and I went there with my parents and with my family and with everybody. My grandmother was there. And I talked to the pastor, who was a part-time at the church, because the church couldn't afford to pay him a full-time salary. And I said, "You know, I just had an idea. Why don't you come to my church and preach? And I'll come here and preach sometime," because I had just heard that the church was going to close in a few months. So he said, "That's a great idea." So we did that. So I got to the church, and now you have to understand that the church was, instead of 2 steps up, there's only 1 step up into the sanctuary. And being small, probably 1/4 or less size of this church, and there was a lectern, and I was about this far from the people sitting in the front row. And sitting in the front row with my former Sunday school teacher. Now, I'm 40-some years old at this time. My Sunday school teacher is still there. My grandmother, who was probably 90 at that time, was there. My mother was there. Everybody was there. Many of the people who I had known when I was a child were there. And I got up there to preach. And I looked at these people and said, what are they going to think about this? Little Jerry Bennett is standing up here now doing all of this stuff? What makes him able to do that? That's not how I remember him. Yeah. Jesus began to speak in the synagogue at Nazareth. Today the scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing. All spoke well of him and were amazed. I said, is this not Joseph's son? And I can just hear what's going through their mind. He shouldn't be here. We should have a real priest doing this. They apparently didn't like everything he said because they threw him out and ran him out of town and tried to dismiss him by throwing him over a cliff. That won't happen here because we're not any cliffs like this. Thank goodness. Things amazing. Hannah said to me, are you working on your sermon? Hannah, raise your hand. She's not very good. She's very shy. She's quiet and shy. She's not good. And she said to this, not just once, and she said to me, I don't see you working on your sermon. I said, I work on my sermon constantly. She didn't understand this. But it's true. I start out the week, in this case I have 2 weeks to prepare. I start out the week reading and then thinking about all the things I'm going to say. And I end up throwing some of the things out and probably keep too many of them in. Every once in a while, something comes to my mind that I see that I have known practically forever, and I never ever noticed it before. You all know what is the most famous Bible verse in the whole Bible, do you not? Yes, you do. I won't tell you that it comes from John 3:16, but if I told you that, then you would know. And you know that because you see it at football games and the stands, see it on bumpers, see the baseball games, John 3:16. Well, now we're going to have a new one. Because the second most famous is this. The second most famous is 1 Corinthians 13, 1 to 13. So from now on, when you make up your banner to go to the football game or the baseball game, you have to make a banner that says 1 Corinthians 13, 1 to 13, and wonder how many people are going to read it. But it's a wonderful, wonderful set of verses about love. I've used it many times at weddings, you frequently hear it. I've done it at funerals. And it does 3 things. First, it tells you what love is. Then it tells you what love is not. And the third thing, and the most important as far as I can see, is that it tells you what love does. Because just loving is not enough unless you use that to approach people and deal with people with love. And it tells you how you can do that. But here's the thing that I noticed this time, which I had never noticed before. And that is this entire reading has to do with past, future, and present. And here's how I know that. The end of the reading says, even now I know now only in part. Now I know only in part. Then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now faith, hope, and love abide. These three, and the greatest of these is love. Faith, dealing with the past, believing in the past, knowing what has happened in the past. Hope for what we know is going to go in the future, and love is the present. So we have past, future, and present, all wrapped up in that one part of the sentence. It's actually a phrase. What do we do with love? Do we just talk about it? No. Do we say, well, it can't be this, or it can't be that, so it must be this? No. What we do is we deal with what love does in our lives and in the lives of people who are around us. Today we have a baptism. Actually, we have 3 baptisms. I've never done 3 baptisms before at the same time. So this will be a first. And love brought them here. Love is what we will be asked to deal with for them in just a few minutes. Amen.